Congrats to Travis Hunter on winning the Heisman Trophy. Now, for the rest of us, it's time to put our futures down for Sawyer Robertson to win it in 2025. We'll tell you why when we get Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube, Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. I'm just realizing I gotta fix this. I gotta fix this background for those of you watching on YouTube. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the Heisman Trophy race and why that is going to have Baylor very much in the mix next year. Plus, we're going to look again at the portal and one of the big names that has left Baylor and the commitment that they got over the weekend, and a weird situation around Nicki Collins' staff that we're still trying to find the answers for. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. So at the end of last week, I did that segment about how Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy would be good for the Big 12. And we're going to get to that part in a minute. But I also thought it was a very well-deserved win for Travis Hunter. And Shion Jayaraja, a great Baylor alum now working for CBS, had a really good point about this of like, I sound like an old man, but it's like classic 2024 social media. It's like, well, Travis Hunter won it because he deserved to, and Ashton Jeanty sucks because he didn't. Or vice versa, if you thought Jeanty should have won it. And I kind of talked about this at the end of last week, and Shion put it better than I did. And it was like, why can't we just accept that these guys would have won the Heisman, 8 of the last 10 years or so? And just appreciate that those were 2 awesome seasons, and it gave us a great Heisman Trophy campaign rather than, nobody remembers Troy Smith's from 2006. No one really remembers Marcus Mariota's from 2014, even though we ran away with the trophy. And this one will be talked about for a long time. Now it's time to start looking towards 2025. And I saw this tweet on Sunday from Brad Crawford of 247 Sports. And he lists college football's 2025 Heisman frontrunners. Arch Manning, Texas. Lenora Sellers, South Carolina. Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. Ryan Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama. Garrett Nussmeier, the next quarterback that Baylor will face. Of course, he's at LSU. And Baylor legacy DJ Lagway of Florida. And I think there's going to be some Baylor flavor in the Heisman voting and the Heisman campaigns next year, but it's not going to be because of someone's dad going to Baylor. It's not going to be because one of them faced Baylor in a bowl game. It's not because one of them used to play in the same conference as Baylor. It's going to be because there's going to be a Baylor player there in that mix and probably in New York City. I don't want to relitigate the Sam Leavitt thing. Like, we've already done that. Sam Leavitt had a better team this year, and I love what Arizona State's done. But he's not the best skill position player on his team. And he is not a better quarterback than Sawyer Robertson. Sawyer Robertson will be in the mix for the 2025 Heisman Trophy. In fact, you could say Sawyer Robertson is a front runner for the Heisman Trophy next year. Those guys he was mentioned with, Sawyer's got better stats or just the same upside as all of those guys. And again, it shows right here with this list, having Sam Leavitt on it. Sam Leavitt, a fine quarterback, right? Good quarterback even. Just not as good as Sawyer Robertson. So if he's a front runner, then Sawyer Robertson is a front runner for the Heisman in 2025. It has to be. That by the way math works, that has got to be a part of this. And a lot of Baylor fans have been commenting that Sawyer Robertson should be added to this because he is the best returning quarterback in the Big 12. So right there, you got a Power 4 conference, and the best returning guy at the most important position is Sawyer Robertson. So therefore, he should also be considered for the Heisman. The other thing that really gears me towards this is he's got a second year now with Jake Spavital. And that is huge, like humongous, right? For a guy who was just trying to figure out his role in the offense for about a year, gets a shot this year when DeQuan Finn goes down, and it looks like he's made for this offense, or this offense was made for him. Now he gets a full year into it, a second year mainly, but a full season where he gets to operate with Jake Spavital. And we talked about the guys that Spavital had coached coming into his tenure with the Baylor Bears, the quarterbacks that he had coached. And all of them, their numbers jumped in their second year. The first one I want to look at is Johnny Manziel, because Spavital only had him for 1 year. The first year, of course, was with Cliff. And then the second year, he gets Spavital. And the numbers go up after a Heisman season. His completion percentage goes up. His yards go up by about 400. His touchdowns go up by 11. His yards per game and his yards per throw go up. And he goes from first in the Heisman voting to fifth. Well, he had a better statistical season the next year. How about the guys who played 2 full years under Jake Spavital? Will Greer, kind of a forgotten one at West Virginia. He upgrades in terms of completions, in terms of attempts, in terms of 6 points in his completion percentage. He throws for just slightly less yards, but throws for 11 more touchdowns and more yards per completion, as well as a much better quarterback rating, 11 spots higher at the quarterback rating in his second year under Jake Spavital. And you can also see what he did with Geno Smith as well. 2 different stints at West Virginia. Both those guys, they added to their touchdowns, their yards per game, their completion percentage, their yards per attempt. All of those go up the second year. And Sawyer Robertson's already got all Big 12 numbers in that first year. He didn't get the honor for some reason, but he absolutely had the numbers for that. And again, I hear this Sam Levitt talk, and I'm like, how can we not get Sawyer Robertson on this short list? Like, for some of these other guys, sure, they've got some talent and some potential, but we have not seen a sample size from Arch Manning or DJ Lagway that we have seen from Sawyer Robertson. And so it's just a constant disrespect. And I don't really know where it's coming from a guy who plays, only 10 games in this year and is completing 63% of his passes, which, again, all those passers we were just talking about got up to about 69, 70%, like leading the nation in completion percentage. That would certainly get him there. And a guy who threw 26 touchdowns to 7 picks when taking over the starting role. And from those of us who watched every week, you know that offense was a mess when he took it over. A mess. And now you give him not a mess, right? Free reign, second year under this offensive coordinator. This is going to be a deadly Baylor offense next year. Deadly. Because again, I mean, we've said it before, but the guy's coming back, right? Josh Cameron, Michael Trigg, probably, Bryson Washington, and Dawson Pendergrass. That whole offensive line, majority of the offensive line. That is an awesome recipe, not only to win a lot of games, but to score a lot of points and have a quarterback in the Heisman conversation. Sawyer Robertson is going to be there. Okay? Some would even say that he will beat out DJ Lagway and Lenora Sellers and Arch Manning and definitely Sam Levitt to win the Heisman Trophy in 2025. Look, I'm just trying to make you guys some money. That's all. Let's look at who the Bears are subtracting and adding in the weekend that was in the Baylor Bears transfer portal. That is coming up next on Locked On Baylor. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. when you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make everyone want more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Sawyer Robertson's definitely coming back. Plenty of other impact players coming back. And thankfully for the Bears, not many impact players not coming back because still they only have a handful of guys in the portal, which the Big 12 as a whole has been doing pretty well at retaining their players. And, naysayers will say, oh, it's because the conference isn't that good. Where are they going to go? Or it's because there are a lot of damn good coaches in this league and good, stable programs in a very competitive league. So it's not as enticing to leave when, Arkansas is 6-6 and looking to fire their coach. That's a big rebuild in the SEC. Those players want to leave, right? Or name your SEC or Big Ten school that had a disappointing season. Here in the Big 12, there were so many teams that were up to it till the end. They're saying, hey, we got a chance to compete to win this conference next year and potentially go to the college football playoff. And you've got some damn good coaches. Again, guys like Leipold and Kleiman and Dillingham at Arizona State and Satake at BYU. This is a mark of a good coach to be able to retain your guys year after year. That's the new college football that we live in. And also in the new one is kind of the politics that we saw, I think, at the Baylor quarterback position this year. Probably no longer. Sawyer Robertson, it's his job. It's his job going into next season. And DeQuan Finn, who had the job coming into this season, is now in the portal. We know that he was going for a medical red shirt after only appearing in, I think, only 3 games for the Bears this year, the 2 that he started. And then he came into that game against Tech in Lubbock and actually scored a touchdown, but had the shoulder injury. It paved the way for Sawyer Robertson to come in, and Sawyer changes the season for the Bears. And now it's DeQuan Finn looking to get one last gasp of college football and entering into the portal to try and find a home for next year. This is an interesting story, kind of this DeQuan Finn era at Baylor. It kind of reads like some, football capitalistic manifesto in a lot of ways, but it's something that we are going to see in college football all the time now. DeQuan Finn comes in as a very hot name in the transfer portal. I was definitely gung-ho and excited on this podcast talking about going out and getting DeQuan Finn and what a game changer he could be. Wins the MAC MVP, has a great career at Toledo, ready to take that next step up, wins the job out of camp, and a couple games in, it looks bad, and he gets injured, and under Sawyer, it looks really, really good. And it looked like things that DeQuan Finn just wasn't going to be able to do with this offense and with the arm strength. And it's I think, important to remember that for a guy that came in making some money and coming in trying to be the starter of this team, that when he got that taken away from him and knew he wasn't going to get it back, DeQuan Finn didn't jump ship. He's out there. He's in, uniform and pads for some of these games. He doesn't quit on his team like some other guys would. And he never makes a stink about it in the media or on social media or anything like that. I think DeQuan Finn deserves credit for that. Some of you might think that's the bare minimum and that's kind of how the world should be. But those of us who follow college football all the time, or any sport, know that that's not the way it is all the time. And DeQuan Finn handled this really professionally, and that's why I'm glad that he's getting, it seems like he's getting this red shirt and will have a shot to go and win a starting job somewhere else. And hopefully for him that turns out more fruitful than it did at Baylor. But it is kind of a snapshot of college football in the transfer portal era. This kid comes in, we don't know what it's like during camp. We didn't even get a look at the spring game. So we really don't know what it was like during camp. We could only go off the non-answers that Dave Aranda gave us all season long, or all off season long. And he wins the job out of camp. And, a month and a half later, you're thinking, how did this kid ever win the job? He comes in, a ton of experience under his belt. That's something that gets lost in this. He had started, 50 some odd games or whatever it was, not quite 50, but 40 some odd games that he had started at Toledo, had won a conference championship there. And Sawyer Robertson came in with just a handful of games, and we saw them all. They were last year. And DeQuan Finn, was definitely making a lot more money than Sawyer Robertson was. And so there might have been some politic in there. You went out, you bought a quarterback. He's going to be your starting quarterback. And with a coach on the hot seat, you can understand that to a certain extent. But the flip side of that is coach on the hot seat, then he should want to go out and put the best guy out there. And that's probably why it took so long to decide who the starter was going to be. I remember saying it during the summer, saying, guys, seriously, because I liked Sawyer Robertson. I didn't know if he was ready to be the starter, but I liked Sawyer the whole time. And I said, if this is going to go right up to the last week, which it did essentially, then that does not mean DeQuan Finn stinks. It means that Sawyer Robertson is getting better and having more time to learn an offense that is more tailored towards his abilities, which we just talked about in the first segment. And I think that was the case. So wishing the best to DeQuan Finn. I still think that kid can be a power 4 starter. Absolutely. And I mean, you at least saw the running ability on tape, man. In that Tarleton game, you saw it against Tech, like speed to speed. That kid's an incredible athlete. So I kind of hope he gets that shot, but it is kind of I guess a warning sign to Power 4 programs that it's like, this is kind of the game. You do have to go out and buy a quarterback, but it doesn't always work out the way that it's supposed to. And this is not the first time this has happened in college football. Michigan would not have won the Orange Bowl against Alabama with Drew Henson at quarterback. They needed to have Tom Brady at quarterback, but Henson was the hot shot, and he was supposed to and they gave him every chance possible, but Brady was the better quarterback. DeQuan Finn got his shot. He unfortunately got hurt. The offense was sputtering in that Utah game anyway. It looked awful. Sawyer Robertson needed that shot, and he got that shot. Bears also added someone in the transfer portal as well. It wasn't all just subtractions because, again, there's not been many subtractions when it comes to Baylor. I think that by my count, and I should have checked this before going on, that's only 5 guys that they've lost to the portal. And none of them have been like every down starting players, not one. Keon Roberts-Day was a rotational piece. Jonah Burton didn't get any targets this year. Carmelo Jones, I don't think got a snap this year. DeQuan Finn was the backup. So it's all depth guys. Alvin Abiselli did start at some points, but he was more a rotational guy by the end of the season. Now you add Matthew Fobbs-White from Tulane and talk about the positions that we were circling here on Locked On Baylor for the offseason in the transfer portal. Defensive end is certainly one, and more specifically, a pass rusher. Whether they play linebacker, whether they play on the line and the 5 technique, doesn't matter. I just need a guy who can get after the quarterback, right? And I really like Travion Barnes that they're still looking at, but Matthew Fobbs-White is going to fit that as well. He's coming over from Tulane, 6'3", 230, does line up a little bit at both, but mainly at a linebacker. That's what he's listed as at Tulane as a sophomore. And he started 5 games this year, kind of came on towards the end of the season, much like we were talking about with Brad Spence from Arkansas, who did commit to the Longhorns. Boo, boo. But Matthew Fobbs-White kind of fits in that same mold there. 21 tackles on the year, 4 sacks, and a forced fumble. Created 22 pressures on about 140 pass rushing snaps this year. Also deflected a pass as well. I cannot stress this enough. Baylor needs pass rushing help big time. They've needed it the last 3 seasons, really, since the Sugar Bowl team. We thought that was going to be a big time advantage for them going into 2022 when they lost a bunch of guys on the back end. It wasn't that way. They still had a great nose tackle in Siaki Ika, but they did not have guys that could get after the passer. And they've stuck with some veteran guys over the last couple of years, guys like TJ Franklin and Gabe Hall and Garmin Randolph, and none of them just became those guys I think they were hoping for. So Matthew Fobbs-White comes in, and I'm hoping that at least brings some more stability to that facet of the game, I guess is what I meant to say. And it's hopefully not the only one. I think Travion Barnes would be a big time one, the linebacker from FIU, and they could use some help at middle and outside linebacker and guys who can get after the passer. But Matthew Fobbs-White certainly fits into that. This is a good pickup. They were bidding against themselves. I think Matthew Fobbs-White had his mind made up. Baylor was his only offer in 3 days or so in the portal, and he said, "Yep, I'm going there." Certainly wouldn't have been the only offer that he got. I mean, you would have to not play at all to get one offer. So certainly he would have been in the mix for some other schools as well. Some Baylor women's assistant coaches will be looking for other schools in the middle of the season here. Weird story coming out of the Nikki Collin camp. That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But just like everywhere else this time of year, we're talking college football playoff. It's back. With the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st. That's this weekend. Starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, SMU battling Penn State at 11 a.m. Central. They wanted me to say Southern Methodist. I'm not doing that. SMU versus Penn State. Then Clemson, who we're all rooting for, looks to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 3 p.m. Central. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So a lot of college football players going into the transfer portal at this time of the year. Not usually the case for women's college basketball assistant coaches, but that is what's happening at Baylor. This story broke on I believe it was Friday evening, and I first saw it from Roy Ogletree of Channel 10. So that's where I first saw it. He was reporting that Baylor has had two assistant coaches depart the women's basketball program, Kiana Ray and Sadie Edwards. Nothing about dismissed, whether they left on their own, but that they're no longer with the program. And two, at the same time, I don't think this is, someone dealing with personal matters that they need. I think this is a dismissal here. Baylor said the decision was made earlier last week. Didn't give this is from the Channel 10 story, by the way, KWTX. Did not give an exact time or reason as to why they're no longer with the team, just confirming that they are gone. Sadie Edwards was an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator, and Kiana Ray was the director of recruiting and player influence. They were both hired before the start of last season. So that's interesting to me. They're both in the recruiting side of this thing. Baylor has been up and down, I would say, recruiting-wise under Nikki Collin. Obviously, they're not pulling down some of the great recruits that they did in the Kim Mulkey era because they're not going to the Final Four and winning national championships yet. But this one is weird. We're talking about mid-December. You haven't even gotten into the conference schedule yet, and you're getting rid of two coaches. There is something more to this. I don't know what it is yet. I'm trying to find out, but you don't just dismiss two assistant coaches in the middle of the season unless something is up, something is wrong. And this is a weird one. And it's unfortunately another bad break for this Baylor women's team. This season has been a failure to launch so far, even though they only have 2 losses. This was a team that, again, was supposed to be competing for the Big 12 championship, and there's obviously still time for that. They have not gotten into the conference schedule, but so far this season, they've had upset losses. They've had one of their best players, Jana Van Geitenbeek, get a season-ending injury. They're trying to get Aaliyah Matharu in, which could be this week. She could be able to play. We're still trying to figure out what all goes into that with her transfer from Florida and the winter break and the next semester. They only know that she's going to be ready for sure for the Big 12 schedule once we get to the other side of January. But it's been a weird one so far, and it's going to be tough to compete in an ultra competitive Big 12 conference when you're just down 2 assistant coaches. That's a lot more to put on everyone else's plate, especially when, this is kind of not a make or break year, but a year to really prove to your haters something fierce. And you want to build on that for next year, and 2 of your recruiting coordinators are gone. This is a weird one. I don't know what's coming of this and haven't heard too much about it, just that these 2 are out the door. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Let me know what you think about the transfer portal, how it's going for Baylor, and potentially where we could see Sawyer Robertson when it comes to the Heisman race next year. Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tweet us at Locked On Baylor if you're not on YouTube, or hit that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here to YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.